I absolutely was in awe of the quality of the PhD students who were at EMBL, who seemed to me the jewel in the crown of EMBL. And one of the strictest selections was picking people for this program. And you were one of the very talented people who was picked to join the EMBL PhD program. So how was the whole experience for you of going through the interview process, learning to work at EMBL?
Well, I mean, I guess I lived it with a little bit of fear, because then, rather early on, I realized how, good the place was. And of course, you want to, compete, but you also feel like you're competing with really bright potential students. So a little bit of fear, but a lot of excitement, and also a sense of, you have nothing to lose from undergoing even a selection like that. You're gonna learn a lot, even if you end up failing. So in the end, why not? And maybe I was young and I didn't care about failures so much back then. So I have a memory of the selection as being tough. A lot of time spent to talk to group leader, get to know of incredible projects that you wouldn't think about, and of course you wouldn't even understand much. But then also, intense time in the library. Remember that I spend, all the off time in between interviews, going into the library and checking, the old version of PubMed to see who was I talking to, and try to figure out what they were actually publishing, and, to try to give the best impression in this one-to-one. So it felt like, the beginning of really serious and solid and, for real kind of work. And then, of course, when I got selected, I was super happy, and I developed such a bond with the other students. And I think this is one value of the PhD program that I still strive to inject in our PhD program now at the university. So you have to really build a class and a community from early on. And the more you sort of, push and challenge the student, of course, in a positive way, the more they will develop this sense of community and trusting each other, that I think put them already in the mood that there's going to be a network of people that you can rely on, that can enrich you. For you, coming in as a junior group leader, I mean, I think, the centerpiece of the EMBL is starting the career, of a group leader, and you're coming off maybe a very successful postdoc, but still you have this mountain in front of you, and you know that you're stepping into a place where, people are producing excellent science, wonderful papers. So did you feel, peer pressure and...
Are you kidding me? I was terrified. That was probably the most pressure I've ever felt in my life. And it came mostly from inside, because I'd been given this incredible opportunity. And I was just surrounded by incredibly hardworking, successful, smart people. And I was full of insecurity about, can I match up to this? The first 6 months, it's like, okay, the beginnings are always difficult, as they say in German, and it is a challenge to move to a new country. I was moving to Heidelberg from having spent a few years working in Boston, in the US, and so you're moving country, you're setting up a home. And then just trying to find your way. And, and that was the first time I had been in charge of running the lab, which is also a big transition to make. And yeah, I was very intimidated by just so many successful people, and by the feeling that don't mess this up, you've got to succeed. And what can you do but try to do good science and work hard? And I was lucky enough that by the end of the first year, things had started to work quite well. And then going into the second year, you could see some success. A few people joined my lab. I had a wonderful first PhD student, Ben Blenko, who is now an incredibly successful research leader in Canada, and we published some nice papers, and then I started not to relax. I don't think you ever relax, but to at least just feel a little bit more confident in myself that maybe I can do this. The best work I've done and the most creative and the highest impact my work has been is with projects that I've thoroughly enjoyed the whole fun of solving problems that hadn't been solved. But it's also, I think, really important to keep a perspective on solving important problems that will really change society for the better and ultimately improve people's lives. And one good example I can give, I mean, there are so many examples, but one good example is in recent years, a lot of our work has shifted towards studying neurodegenerative disease, so inherited disorders, primarily Huntington's disease, but also some other types of neurodegenerative disorder. And there you can ask the same really fascinating basic questions about how do cells work, what's biology, genetics, really fascinating problems, but it has huge impact on people's lives. And the last few years I've been going to an annual therapeutics conference that's organized by the Huntington's Foundation. And there, not only scientists come and talk about their work, it's usually quite a small focused meeting, but one of the things that's had a huge impact on me is sitting down at lunch or dinner and you talk to someone, you know, your neighbor, and you say, what do you work on? And a number of times the person said, well, I'm not actually a scientist, I'm from an affected family, and you know, we're so keen to hear about the work you're doing because this is a disease with no current therapy available. And when you understand that it's really a death sentence for the people, I always leave these conferences so motivated to want to get back in the lab and say, we got to do more here, we got to try to make a difference. And I do feel passionately about that. So I think the challenge is to tackle big, important problems and try to do what you can, when you can, to enjoy doing exciting science, but always with a mind to where it can make a difference. And one of the catches to that is we work in a vacuum, because at the moment, I think I can say with confidence that we don't know enough to predict how to cure Huntington's disease. It's not that people don't try, and many other forms of cancer or other types of disease. It's not that people don't try, but we still need to know so much basic biology to know the right place to look.
I actually relate a lot to that, and I should add that what I found very surprising, but every time I go to a conference, I get out with that feeling, is how much families and patients are good scientists in a way, because they face every day this sort of disease. So they not only they want to learn, and a lot of them are very knowledgeable because of course they have a big interest in what the disease is, but also they are, they observe a lot of those diseases, so they are very good to talk to because they can give you, sometimes insights in the traits of the disease, in what could be things and approaches and angles that you could take, also in terms of science, by just looking at the aspects that perhaps are beneficial to the patient. So, I couldn't speak more to the merging and having an open, accessible discussion.